Hello, YouTube. I'm Jacob.
I'm Kaleb.
And we're here doing a series that's a thinly veiled ripoff of that one guy's video, What If the Star Wars Prequels Were Good? Inspired, air quotes. We're doing pretty much the same thing, where we're debating on how we would have done certain movies differently. They don't necessarily have to be bad, but things that we feel like we could have improved.
Yeah, just the kind of things where you look back and you're like, hey, why didn't they do that instead? Because that might have made more sense, or fit the characters more, or, been good. We're doing Iron Man 2. We're doing Iron Man 2 eventually, so just,
Yeah, Iron Man 2, it wasn't
the worst.
Bad, it's just ungood.
It's double plus ungood.
Not bad, just double plus ungood, I guess.
Alright, so we will start with the first film in the list, and the one that we are changing the absolute least of is Iron Man 1. Iron Man 1 is a spectacular movie. Go watch it. Go make your grandma watch it. She'll thank you later.
I know, it was a great movie, but there's one issue that we have that, weirdly enough, seems to spill into a lot of all the other MCU movies. You might have heard a lot of people commenting on how the MCU doesn't really have the best track record with villains. I mean, they've gotten better about it recently with The Vulture and Ego. They're two of my favorite movie villains of all time, so they're getting better.
Well, that's what spoilers for Guardians too.
Well, yeah, but...
spoilers abound.
Ego is a villain in the original comics, I think.
He is, usually. Okay, so...
But anyway, the problem that we notice that's a recurring thing with the MCU villains is that their motives always seem to completely fall apart in the last third of the movie, and we'll get more into that in Winter Soldier, but for now, let's just focus on Iron Man 1 and its okay-ish villain.
Okay. Obadiah Stane, played by Jeff Bridges, a.k.a. Bad Iron Man, Ironmonger.
Iron-er Man.
Yeah. He's not bad. I mean, he's played by Jeff Bridges, who is always a fun actor. He's got good chemistry with Robert Downey Jr., even if he's not on screen a lot. And as a villain, his motives are pretty airtight. His plan was to kill Tony using the 10 rings, take over the Stark Enterprises, make sure it's doing weapons, and use all the things Tony created and invented to become rich, powerful, and eventually have his own giant robot suit, because wouldn't we all?
But the problem is that even though I didn't see the issue with this, I can understand why Kaleb did. It's that once he actually gets the Ironmonger suit in the last third of the movie and starts wreaking havoc on it, he completely gets drunk on his own power, and I think even he kind of forgot what he was doing in the first place.
Yeah, because his entire plan was really foolproof. He has terrorists kidnapping Tony, and other than the video they sent Stane that is only on Stane's personal computer, it's completely airtight,
He just didn't count on Tony being able to build something in an internet meme.
Yeah. And then when he comes back, he uses that really cool sonic device thing that I'm amazed isn't part of his armor.
I don't know, maybe Tony's suit insulated the sound on it, made it soundproof, because I think that would be something that you would do in making a mech suit.
That's fair.
Soundproof it.
So, his plan is really foolproof. The problem is that once he starts fighting Tony outside of the Stark Enterprises building, he is just beating the crap out of him in the middle of the street. And it's like, okay, so your plan is to kill Tony, and then sell all of these things you've built as the leader of Stark Enterprises, whose other co-president just happened to be beaten in the street to death by a giant robot. Or even if they don't know Tony died, even if Tony just disappears, which that's going to be noticed, especially because S.H.I.E.L.D. is interested in him now.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to get away with it. He just is totally oh yeah, it's fine. I'm just going to beat this guy to death in the middle of the street with cars everywhere, and no one will question when I try selling this suit later. They won't go, hey, didn't you kill a guy in that? Practice.
Because the thing is, I think we could hand-wave that, at the very least hand-wave it, or just address it in general by just maybe throwing in a couple lines of dialogue in the final fight where Tony is getting beaten up. He's like, so yeah, you kill me, you take over the company, and everyone's just going to ignore the fact that you just beat me up in the middle of the street. And then Stane could probably respond with something like, well, why not? I'm a corporate executive. I've gotten away with worse.
Yeah, or if you want to factor in his relationship with the 10 Rings, he can make a comment about how, the leader of the 10 Rings isn't going to let this technology just disappear. He's going to look after me, blah, blah, blah. Set up the Mandarin.
Oh, yeah, we're going to get to Iron Man 3 in just a bit.
Yeah.
We're not, just a heads up, we're not going to try to change the plot too much, but we're going to edit certain bits to make them flow a bit better.
Yeah, the idea is essentially not really to remove characters or add characters entirely.
But more to harmonize them.
Yeah, exactly. Alright, so that's Iron Man 1.
Yeah, that's all we do differently. Great movie.
Great movie. Go see the movie.
On to the ungood movie.
Iron Man 2 is a movie that is almost about so many things. It's almost about the world reacting to Iron Man and people rising up to fight Iron Man because you have this challenge now. It's almost about setting up more S.H.I.E.L.D. and Avenger stuff. It's almost about Tony and Pepper's relationship. And it's almost about Demon in a Bottle. But at the end of the day, it's not about any of those things.
Oh, actually, before we go, for the non-comic book reading public, we might as well explain the general premise of the two comic book stories we feel this movie takes a lot from, Armor Wars and Demon in a Bottle. This is just like comic books for dummies here, like for those of you who are uncultured swines like us and only looked up these comics because of the movies. Armor Wars, in a nutshell, is about, was it Justin Hammer? Wait, no, was it Titanium? Wait, is Titanium Man Justin Hammer?
Not in the comics.
Okay, so whoever Titanium Man is?
Yeah, it's basically just about people building their own Iron Man armors and fighting Tony.
Like someone leaks the blueprints of the Iron Man suit on the internet and now all the villains have their own Iron Man.
Yeah, or it was, this was like in the 90s, so it was probably the, I don't know, the Stark Web.
Yeah.
Is that what Spider-Man's costume is? The Stark Web? Off topic. But yeah,
okay,
you have Armor Wars, which is all about people becoming their own Iron Man. And you have this really logical, like at the end of Batman Begins, where it's like, we buy Kevlar, they buy armor-piercing rounds. You get an escalation, which is natural in a world of superheroes. And that is the horrific sound of an M&M package.
I'm sorry. I get hungry, okay? The other story that we wanted to bring up is Demon in a Bottle. It's a story. It's a character study of Tony and how his alcoholism compromises both his ability to run Stark Enterprises and his ability to be Iron Man and save people.
Yeah, and part of what makes Tony such an interesting character, both in the comics and in the MCU, is how flawed a person he is. How he has so many vices. And so much of him being character is him taking responsibility for his actions and his mistakes. I mean, he goes through women and booze faster than James Bond. So Iron Man 2.
So first and foremost with Iron Man 2, we're getting rid of the arc reactor is slowly killing him subplot.
Yeah, because ultimately it serves as a really flawed way for him to be dying. And then there's the fact that at the end of the movie, he discovers his father, Walt Hughes, created... it's Walt Disney and Howard Hughes, discovers this element that he recreates in his laboratory, and this must totally change the face of the MCU, except it hasn't been mentioned since Iron Man 2.
Not to mention, the whole thing about the arc reactor poisoning him is introduced and resolved in Iron Man 2, so you could cut it out and change nothing in the MCU.
Yeah, and this new element business is completely useless.
Not to mention, from a purely, even if you're just looking at this as a movie itself, the whole... subplot of discovering a different element grinds the movie to a screeching halt for a good half hour.
Yeah, because you have this half-hour segment of him flipping around the Stark Expo schematics because they're actually an atomic formula for a new element that no one knows about. Early production materials and the original novelization have it basically setting up that he rediscovered vibranium from World War II when his father, Howard Stark, basically Howard Hughes.
Robert Downey Sr.
Robert Downey Sr. used vibranium to create Captain America's shield, which we do see in Iron Man 2, even though it looks nothing like it should. I guess it's a replica or a false replica.
Well, it's Phil Coulson, so it's probably just a merchandise thing that he just happened to pick up that day.
That's a good point. So it's really superfluous and doesn't mean anything in the grander scheme of the MCU, so just cut it out. Focus on Tony just being a flawed... very flawed human being.
So, yeah, that's what we would do instead of the whole, he's partying hard and doing all this stuff because he's dying. We're going to replace that with him sort of, for lack of a better word, being drunk on his own hype.
Yeah, at the start of the movie, he's riding high. He's the world's only real superhero right now. He's a big deal. He's rich. He's great. Him and Pepper are kind of more of a thing than they were previously, but still not entirely a thing.
They're not going, yeah, Happy's been holding on to that wedding ring for a good 9 years.
However the MCU timeline works now. We'll see where it is next year. But yeah, have him just be like, yes, I'm Iron Man. This is amazing. I'm going to go to Burger King every day because I'm an American. But yeah, so basically have Tony just drunk on his own hype, because in the beginning, he misses an award ceremony in the beginning of the first movie because he's busy gambling. Mm-hmm. It is totally in Tony's character, even after he discovers the weapons he's been using are used for these purposes, and after he has this internal realization, that's not going to fix all of his other addictions. It's going to fix his priorities, but it's not going to change him from being a drunk, womanizing idiot.
And maybe we can make it so that his motivations for promoting Pepper to CEO are more selfish, because he's like, hey, I'm Iron Man. I'm already getting a ton of royalties now. What do I need the desk job for?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically just making it official since he's barely the CEO in the first movie. Pepper really runs everything from the start. Just make it official.
So yeah, he's right. He's like, yes, I am amazing. Like at the beginning of the movie, and then Vanko shows up.
And now Vanko, he's cool. He's really cool. Mickey Rourke, I think Mickey Rourke is the guy who plays him.
Yeah, Mickey Rourke. Like, a lot of people say he's a weak villain. I personally don't mind because his motivations are pretty interesting. He's upset that Howard Stark took all the credit for the thing him and Vanko's father discovered.
I think his last name is Ivan, after the original Crimson Dynamo.
Ivan. Yeah, and he wants to take it out on Howard's son. And I actually thought that his obsession with bears was a pretty endearing character trait.
Yeah.
Makes him pretty memorable.
Yeah, trust me. If you watch Iron Man 2, you remember my world.
I want my beard.
Yeah. So yeah. First step is don't make him Whiplash. You can still keep him with the whips, but just have him be the Crimson Dynamo. Have a stronger focus on he is literally following in the exact same footsteps as Tony. Have him in his weird Siberian ramshackle mud hut in the middle of the winter desert. Have it be like a Cold War salvage yard or something. That's what him and his father did. Have his father die. Have him give him the notes for the arc reactor. He starts building everything. And then when you have the racetrack thing, we see this one mechanic guy goes into this the trailer of a truck and just busts out in this giant homemade armor suit from pieces of a Cold War tank. You've got a tread skirt, something maybe one arm is just basically a tank turret. It's got a big Russian red star on one shoulder. Just be own the fact that this movie is adapting a character who is called the Crimson Dynamo and is most fundamentally a Russian Cold War supervillain. Have fun with it,
Mm-hmm. So he manages to fight Tony to a standstill, but maybe he gives out because Ivan Vanko's. How is his last name pronounced? Is it Vanko or Vanko?
I think it's accent, so Vanko is fine.
Vanko, okay. But maybe Vanko's suit's arc reactor fizzles out at the last second, but he's already made his point, and he still gets his whole.
When people see God bleed, they cease to believe in him.
They still have that, and this is the whole point that we're doing with Tony still being full of himself at the beginning of the movie, because this is a huge reality slap in the face for Tony, realizing that someone else did what he did, and just as good as him, if not better.
Yeah.
Since established that Vanko totally would have won if his arc reactor was as perfected as Tony's.
Yeah. He didn't have any of the resources. When you compare what Tony did in a cave with a box of scraps and Vanko, they're really the same. And I think it makes sense that Tony does not deal not just with competition, but the idea that someone is not only better at him, but better at him at the things he's good at. I think Tony's ego would take a bruising, and it's really selfish and it's really petty. But it's something that I think would really fit Tony's character. That it's not just the fear of someone with the same power he has. That's a huge part of it. Is he's oh my gosh, how is it that someone has the power I do? Someone can do all these terrible things that I'm trying to stop. But it's also, I hate that someone's good at this. I hate that someone's better than me, and just Tony's ego can't really take it. And I think the combination of fear and bruised pride just causes him to go into this spiral. And you can have the party scene. You can have where he gets drunk and he, is just acting like an idiot, and he probably hits on some girls because he's drunk and he's a jerk, and him and Pepper aren't actually in a relationship yet. Kind of. It's weird. It's real weird.
And I think that at this point Pepper would probably be sick of him.
Yeah. You can still and you have Justin Hammer can be pretty much the same. I quite enjoyed Justin Hammer. I think some of his jokes don't work great, but overall I really enjoy the fact that his character he's a dude who really wants to be Tony Stark, and he just sucks at it.
Yeah, let's talk about Justin Hammer and his interactions with Vanko for a bit. Remember when we said that Vanko had that whole people seeing God bleed thing? Well, that's another instance of third act motive decay for the MCU villains, because in the original movie, at that point, if that was the point Vanko was trying to get across, he'd already won. He didn't need to do anything else.
Yeah. Justin Hammer breaks him out of prison and goes, "Hey, I want you to build things for me." There's no reason Vanko would.
So maybe address that by when Hammer breaks him out, he's like, all right, you made your point. You made God bleed. You are now the new God. You are a Crimson Dynamo. He just makes up the name because it sounds cool.
Yeah, address it. Have it be, have him become the Crimson Dynamo. Have Justin Hammer be pretty similar. Make him a little funnier. Sam Rockwell's a funny guy. Like, just maybe give him a couple better jokes, something. Keep the bird. The bird's funny.
And in regards to Hammer and Vanko and the stuff they're working on, we have two possible ways that the climax could be just a little different. Option 1. Instead of Vanko being the one controlling the drones, Hammer could be the one controlling the drones, and Vanko's in the fight itself, so we could still keep that. Actually, that bit that I actually kind of like with the villain hijacking the War Machine armor.
Which War Machine would be exactly the same. There's nothing wrong with him in the movie.
Yeah, we like War Machine. He's great.
Yeah, he decides Tony isn't responsible enough to be Iron Man. He takes the suit away from him. He brings it to the military to suit it up, and that's where we get War Machine. It's a great origin for War Machine.
Option 2 for the revised climax. Get rid of the drones entirely and have Hammer become Titanium Man, another comic book villain.
Yeah, and Armored Adventures had Justin Hammer becoming Titanium Man, so there's at least a little precedent for it if you want to play around with things.
And it would tie into the whole him wanting to be Tony Stark.
Yeah, it makes sense that ultimately his final goal is to mooch off of other people's skill and success so he can become the new Tony Stark and be the new Iron Man.
And if we go this route, maybe Hammer could be the one to use the ex-wife.
Yeah, he's like, "This is my secret move!"
Ding, missile, pink.
Yep, that's it. They just look at him and they just beat the crap out of him. And I think it would also make for a much more compelling fight to have a 2-on-2 battle. Because the Iron Man 2 climax is just shooting at a bunch of drones. It's just generic. While if you had an actual 2-on-2 fight, you'd be forced to be more interesting because you can't just have Tony mow down half of the enemies with a rocket launcher.
Well, actually, that's the other thing. That's the risk we run with getting rid of the drones entirely, because part of the whole point of the drones was to kind of handicap Tony, because he ends up using his one-use unibeam thing. Was it called the unibeam?
Yes, unibeam.
He uses the unibeam to get rid of all the drones, so he doesn't have access to it once Whiplash shows up.
Yeah, but if you just have him use it earlier during a fight with Hammer, or just uses it on Vanko earlier, you can still use it. Besides, the unibeam is also one of those abilities that you don't actually have to put in the movie. You don't have to introduce it as his final attack.
Or maybe if we do go the route of it being a 2-on-2 fight, maybe a whole part of it is like they're trying to get a situation where Tony is able to use the unibeam on both of them at the same time.
Yeah, or he has to charge it to some extent, and it's such a crazy fight that he just can't get dedicate the time.
Like they're unable to, they're in a stalemate against Crimson Dynamo and Titanium Man. Tony's like, well, I do have one less technique, but it's going to take 5 minutes to charge. It's going to take 5 minutes to charge, so you're going to have to keep their attention for 5 minutes. And considering that they were able to fight us to a standstill, I'm sure you can handle it.
Yeah.
So then War Machine goes and gets the crap kicked out of him, and then Tony's like, "Phenomena, do 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 do, phenomena, do 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 do."
He's just standing there like Goku with the spirit bomb.
Watch Dragon Ball of Rage, seriously, because it's hilarious.
All right. We are not plugged by Team 4-Star. If we were, we'd probably have better microphones.
Okay, so is there anything else about... Oh, yeah, like the stuff with Fury and Natasha.
So, first off, Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3 also has this problem, is that the end of the movie pretends that there's not going to be an Avengers movie immediately after it where Tony stars as Iron Man.
Because in Iron Man 2, it's saying the whole thing that Tony isn't approved for the Avengers, and seriously, you really think audiences are going to buy that? I mean... Say what you will about Batman vs. Superman, but at least it acknowledged that Superman is going to show up for Justice League. It doesn't pretend that he's going to stay dead.
Yeah. At the end of the movie, Fury's like, "You can't be an Avenger." And it's not brought up at all in the actual Avengers movie.
Well, actually, I think it is. When
Tony brings it up, but it doesn't affect the plot. It's something that's pretty much immediately waved over because desperate times, desperate measures, that whole thing.
Yeah.
It's something that you don't need to have because it's resolved pretty much immediately. If the Avengers was more about Tony doing his own thing and then becoming an Avenger, that'd be a different story. But it's not. It doesn't matter that he wasn't approved. So he gets approved. Maybe he makes it by the skin of his teeth or something. Black Widow and Fury are also kind of pointless. They're
Yeah,
just
because honestly, here's how unmemorable Black Widow was in Iron Man 2. When I first saw the Avengers, I honestly thought that this was the first time Black Widow showed up. It wasn't until later when I was rewatching Iron Man 2, I was like, wait, Black Widow was in this movie?
I can remember 2 moments of her in the entire movie. The one time she spoke Russian, and that time when she like kind of poses on the ground after she beats up the guards.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you anything else about her role in the movie, but she punched people and spoke Russian once, which I think is her entire role in the movie.
Yeah, honestly, that's another reason why I think that Iron Man 2 as it is could just easily be skipped.
Yeah, like cut out the stuff with Tony's dad and instead focus on Pepper and Tony, or have scenes with Pepper and Natasha. Have them interacting, have them talking, give Pepper someone to talk to, or potentially, have kind of a kind of back and forth with Natasha and Fury and Tony, and then like Tony and Pepper, and then Pepper and Natasha, where you kind of have a bunch of people talking and a bunch of people interacting.
So instead of having a thing near the end of the movie that drags on way too long and grinds the pace to a screeching halt, have like more character moments interspersed throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, and incidentally, when I made the remark about it's Iron Man 2 as it is now, you can just skip it. On the topic of movies that you can skip, we're not going to cover The Incredible Hulk, because I think most of the problems in that movie just come down to rights kerfuffles, and those can't really be helped.
Yeah, and the fact that it's the only one with Edward Norton, and then it's Mark Ruffalo, and you really don't need to watch it.
Since everyone knows who the Hulk is, you don't really need to have it established for you when you go into the Avengers, because most people already know. Banner plus angry equals gigantic green smash monster.
Yeah, you're good. No one saw fit to explain why there's a dude who shoots bows and arrows.
He had like 5 seconds of screen time in Thor, but he did nothing.
He literally took out his bow and arrow, went, "Do I shoot him? No? Bye, guys."
I'm in the movie!
Literally, somehow less important than Black Widow in Iron Man 2, which is amazing. Yeah, so just with Iron Man 2, maybe have Fury and Natasha have maybe at least slightly a grander purpose than just sitting there and wondering if Tony is worth the after-credit scene of Iron Man 1? We talked about the Avengers Initiative. And by that, I mean I want to sit in a donut shop for 2 hours and then decide you're not worth being an Avenger.
Yeah, that's the one thing I kind of regret about this rewrite. We're going to lose that one line. Mr. Stark, please exit the donut.
No, we can keep it, because we can still have Tony being irresponsible and still have Fury unsure.
Okay, so yeah, keep that line.
Yeah, like, just maybe reorganize it so at the end of the movie, Fury doesn't say, "You're not going to be an Avenger." Maybe it's more like, "Man,
If you don't shape up, we're revoking your suit privileges." And
yeah.
Tony is like, "Really? You're gonna baby me like this? I know if I ever mentor someone, I'm not going to revoke their suit privileges for being irresponsible or whatever."
I have great power after all. I don't need responsibility." But like have Fury be like, "You made it by the skin of your teeth," or maybe have Fury be kind of like, "Man, this is the Avengers. This is great." Maybe if you want to have the 3 Iron Man movies have at least some kind of overarching plot.
Yeah, like maybe since Natasha's there, like have her like being there to sort of try to find some dirt on the 10 Rings. Because even if we might as well still have the 10 Rings story arc going, even if Iron Man 2 is the interim move between Iron Man 1 and 3, sort of like the Dark Knight trilogy was. Like Batman 1 and 3 continue. Like Batman Begins and Dark Knight Rises did the whole storyline of the League of Shadows where the Dark Knight was its own thing.
Yeah, I mean we're gonna get to the Dark Knight Rises at some point, but
eventually.
Yeah, so. Maybe that's what Pepper. Maybe that's what her arc is in the story. That's what her kind of point is in the story is.
Like tethering Tony back down to.
Maybe
keeping him in check, basically.
Maybe she is actually personally looking into the 10 Rings. Maybe she wants to know more about this organization. She wants to learn more about them, and that's why Natasha's there to help her. And maybe it's a thing where Tony doesn't want to think about the 10 Rings. Tony doesn't want to look back on that because it's a moment of supreme weakness, and even if it created Iron Man, he doesn't like looking back on those times, so he's not willing to talk about it.
Which leads to something that we're going to discuss in our thing on Iron Man 3 in just a bit. But for now, is there anything in Iron Man 2 that we didn't go over? Okay, story arc, seeing God bleed, drunk on his own high.
I think we're good. We're good. Okay, so
Iron Man 3. Now, for the record, I didn't have the amazingly huge problems with Iron Man 3 that a lot of people seem to have.
Which I also have these problems, so.
Which, for what it was, like, It didn't work very well as an adaptation, but I thought it worked well as its own thing.
Yeah, so
I
here's...
feel the same way about Spider-Man Homecoming, to be honest, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah. So with Iron Man 3, now we said we're trying not to recast anybody or remove or introduce any characters completely not in the movie. We have one exception, and that is the Mandarin. The Mandarin is a classic Iron Man villain. He's Iron Man's nemesis. He's one of the only Iron Man villains that really sticks around and is important. And whether or not you agree that how they handled the Mandarin was a good story choice, it's fundamentally a case of taking this character and then literally turning that character into a punchline for a character who doesn't have more than one page of screen time in the comics. Not getting into the issue of replacing a Chinese character with a white dude. Completely separate discussion, but that's also a discussion that's happening.
In regards to the Ten Rings and like the Mandarin being Chinese versus white versus I don't know, like we could establish that the Ten Rings is a global terrorist organization, not merely Middle Eastern. They're all over the world, but also bring up that they mostly stay out of America and Western Europe because they don't want to have to compete with Hydra.
Yeah, we could establish that the Ten Rings began in China, and therefore the Mandarin is a Chinese guy. Have him played by a Chinese actor. There are plenty of Chinese actors. Like cast one in your movie maybe. And don't have him be stereotypical. Don't give him a Fu Manchu. Don't give him anything like that. Just have him be a Chinese dude who also happens to be a supervillain.
Yeah, I'm in the mental image of what the Mandarin would look like. I'm for some reason getting the mental image of Fire Lord Ozai.
I could see that, yeah. Although he's based on a Japanese, he's more Japanese than Chinese. But,
Sorry,
but
I'm an idiot.
No, it's fine. But like something you can have him with kind of the ringly kingly vibe, the regal kingly vibe.
No, Ringly is still appropriate.
Is that a word? Ringly?
It's the name of the circus guy, but he has rings.
Yeah. So have the Mandarin actually there. Have the Ten Rings be a global organization, and this is where we have Aldrich Killian. Aldrich Killian is still important.
And on another note, one of the things that Kaleb in particular was disappointed with was the lack of aim in the movie. I mean, it's there, but it's not.
The most we get is they're on a cue card, like Aldrich Killian, Maya Hansen. She's fun. She can stay in the movie. She can be basically the same. She's not really important. She can just be a plot character, I guess. Hands in the business card, it's like Advanced Ideas Mechanics, which is, first of all, kind of a stupid name for a business. We are Advanced Ideas Mechanics. Not Advanced Ideas Management. Not Advanced Ideas Developments or something. I guess that'd be aid.
Yeah, moving on. But the point is, give people the AIM uniforms, or at the very least, those beekeeper outfits, or at the very least, hazmat suits that look vaguely like the uniform from the comic.
Yeah, literally, just take a hazmat suit and apply the MCU visual style and aesthetic to it, and it's like AIM. Boom. Give them a cool little crosshairs patch on their shoulder or something. Not a big AIM. They're AIM. Call them AIM. Have them in yellow.
Okay, so so anyway, Aldrich Killian.
I think we can cut out the weird rooftop scene, because that's just, really weird.
What was the rooftop scene again? It's been a while since I've seen the movie, to be honest.
Yeah, so you have the introduction of Aldrich Killian. He's this nerdy guy who walks with a limp. He's got a walking stick, and he's like, I want to talk to Tony Stark about Extremis. And then Tony's like, yeah, meet me on the roof. And then he just completely abandons him, and this somehow fuels Aldrich Killian's long, long path to villainy and destroying Iron Man.
And as How It Should Have Ended did point out, that's literally Syndrome from The Incredibles.
Yeah, so let's cut that out entirely. Instead...
Although Aldrich Killian is still going to be in the movie.
Yeah.
He's just going to not be played exactly the same role that he did. In the first half of the movie, he'd be pretty much the same, but in the second half, he's going to play a role more similar to, I don't know, Justin Hammer in Iron Man 2 or the Tinkerer from Spider-Man Homecoming. But he's still going to be an active part of the plot, maybe be the dragon / the evil genius.
Yeah, have him be the guy who's working for the Mandarin. Maybe we find out that he's getting paid. The Extremis' funding is coming from the Ten Rings. That the Mandarin wants this technology. This not only ties into the first Iron Man movie with Stane's connections to the Ten Rings, but this also serves to give the Mandarin superpowered abilities and have Extremis still be in the plot. Mandarin wants Extremis. This is where we get into how Extremis will work.
And if we want to keep the whole thing from the beginning, from the original movie, from Iron Man 3 as we have it, about how Extremis was wasn't meant to be like explosive or terrorist stuff, but they're using that as a cover-up because it doesn't work. We could still keep that if it's going wrong. Then the Mandarin calls killing. He's like, "Hey, yo, man, cool thing you got there. Can I have it?"
It blows you up. We'll figure something out. So this is where we get into the rings, because he's the Mandarin. He should have rings connected to his superpowers, because adapt to your characters.
In this case, the rings are inhibitor rings for Extremis, so that it gives you, not only does it sort of mitigate the side effects of Extremis, but it also gives you control over, like, each ring gives you control over one specific aspect of Extremis.
Yeah, that basically each ring lets you tap into a specific ability, such as super strength, fire projection. If we give him like the energy blasts that the Malin Extremis guy from the comics has, maybe like super agility, super strength, super healing, if we basically tie each of these abilities to a specific ring. Sure, it's not adapting the exact abilities of the Mandarin's
because
rings.
Let's face it, the original Mandarin rings are unbelievably overpowered.
Yeah, so the Mandarin in the comics, his rings are really overpowered. One of them is literally alchemy, and can transmutate anything. One of them is like mind control. One of them is lasers. One of them is ice. One of them is fire. One of them is dark force, whatever that is.
One of them is black holes.
Yeah, I think one of them is magnets.
How do they work?
Don't start.
And besides, we already have a far superior magnet villain in Marvel.
So yeah, have the Mandarin, have each ring taps into a different Extremis ability. Then, when you have him encountering Extremis mooks earlier in the story, we see that each of them has a ring. And we see them maybe tapping the ring or like flicking their hand to kind of activate the different abilities. And that's kind of a key as to how the powers work. Maybe we see one of them, there's that really cool fight, I think it's at an amusement park, where there's the one dude who's like just on fire. Maybe at the start of the fight, he's, just using one ability at a time. Maybe he's like 3 or 4 rings, because we see the rings being built over the course of the story, because it's hard to manage all those abilities at once. And if we need some kind of at least vaguely scientific explanation for how they work, we can just say that the human body is, the brain can send signals to shut off specific parts of the body. Like when you're in fight or flight mode, your body starts digesting food. That the rings basically send electrical impulses to the brain to shut off specific aspects of the new Extremis biology. So maybe this guy, he's basically Malin. I think he has a name in the movie. I don't care.
I don't know, but for the sake of this video, we're just going to call him Malin.
Yeah. So, maybe like they're fighting and he's at disadvantage, and we see him rip off the rings, and he just bursts into flames, and he's just like going nuts on Iron Man, then he explodes. To show how unstable Extremis is and how the rings act as really significant inhibitors. So, even the majority of the film won't really be too different.
Like, we're still going to keep the detective stuff because I like the detective stuff, and let's be honest, we all like the kid.
The kid's fine. The main thing we would change in regards to the first part of the story would be Tony's character, because in Iron Man 3, Tony has PTSD, and the thing is, it's really well written and well acted PTSD. The problem is, the movie does not do an adequate job of explaining why he suddenly has PTSD when the events of the first 2 Iron Man movies, and even at the end of the Avengers, he's completely fine. And you can argue with the Avengers that he was in shock.
No, PTSD is sort of delayed.
Sure, but I think that the only explanation the film really gives for why he has PTSD is just that he almost died in space. Which, don't get me wrong, I never want to go into space, that's terrifying. But considering that he also fought aliens and also almost died, and also froze in space once before when fighting Monger.
Well,
when he was testing.
When he was testing it. He wasn't in space though. He was in the high atmosphere.
Sure, but I think Tony's been in enough situations where the events that happened in the Avengers, at least in regards to how his character has been throughout the movies, it seems a little weird for him to suddenly be completely and utterly destroyed with PTSD in Iron Man 3. What we suggest is tapping more into, in Iron Man 2, his bruised ego, carrying over that Tony just can't handle things being more powerful than him, in a combination of sincere fear, but also his pride, is that it sends him into the spiral. And so instead of him drinking or womanizing or peeing in his suit, his solution is instead to build Iron Man, to try to be better, to try to be stronger. And we see in his character arc, he's trying to find healthier ways to cope and to express his trauma.
Said trauma is also compounded by the fact that he's now dealing with the terrorist organization that kidnapped him in the first movie and nearly killed him.
Yeah, his goal, like his villain for the movie is the guy who is behind, the guy who hired the guys who almost killed you. Sure, Stain was also behind that, but I feel like we should have Tony emotionally dealing with the fact that he's fighting the Ten Rings again. That should be something that is emotionally affecting him and something that contributes to his trauma, absolutely. And really, that's the main thing. The climax, obviously, the fight is not between Killian and... Would we keep the stuff with the president?
I don't know. It's
kind of really arbitrary. 'Cause it's like, where is all this funding coming from for extremis? The vice president's daughter or granddaughter is in a wheelchair, so he's helping them kidnap the president. Let's cut that out entirely. We don't need the president stuff. We really don't. It's really weird. It's really arbitrary, and it's kind of just a way for War Machine to be involved when it doesn't have to be. We can just have War Machine be involved because there's a terrorist organization in the story. If you want to have the actor who played the vice president and the president in the film, he could be a general. He could be some kind of military officer who acts as kind of War Machine's commanding officer, or Iron Patriot in Iron Man 3, and him and Tony are kind of working together, and Iron Patriot could be kind of a liaison between the military and between Tony, because they butt heads by default. But this is kind of a place where the two of them are kind of on the same page, that they both want to get rid of the Ten Rings and get rid of the Mandarin. And so the climax would be a fight not between Killian and Tony, but between the Mandarin and Tony, and Mandarin using all the crazy extremis abilities
and giving himself all the extremis and taking all the rings. So he could still have the interesting visual that we got with the guy on fire with the dragon tattoo that we got in Iron Man 3, because as much as we feel Killian was kind of a weak villain, I actually really do like that image.
It's a cool image,
And maybe they could win the fight by end up damaging the rings to the point where he can't control his power and ends up exploding.
Yeah. Maybe in the beginning of the film, you see him draped in this long, regal robe, and you see wires coming out from underneath the robe because he's plugged with all this extremis stuff. Then at the end of the movie, he throws off this robe, and you see the dragon tattoos. He's ripped. He's got you see he's got the rings. And have to be a really intimidating, really tough-looking dude, the way the Mandarin has looked in the comics for the past 10 years or so, where he usually wears more of a suit instead of this robe. Have him using these abilities. He's breathing fire. He's launching bolts of lightning and stuff. We see Tony fires on him and he clicks a ring. We see the ring flash, and we see the wounds close up on his chest.
Well, maybe one of the extremis powers could involve this is taking a bit from the original Extremis comic, but in the original comic, Tony actually gives himself Extremis and uses it to hardwire the Iron Man suit into his nervous system. So maybe we could not do something similar to that, where one of the ring powers that they have is somehow manipulating machinery. And so maybe we could use that to have the Mandarin pull sort of a Vanko in Iron Man 2, where he takes control of at least some of the House Party Iron Man suits.
Yeah, and we can even give him new abilities for the final battle that could be at least a little bit closer to the comic one. Give him lasers. Maybe he has the ability to basically burn away whatever he touches. And these could be addressed to be new abilities that he had Extremis programmed with. Sure, is it complete and utter science fiction bullcrap that you can program the human body to shoot lasers? Absolutely. But what's the point of making this movie if you're not going to have fun with the superhero material?
Yeah, because this is a universe where Howard the Duck exists. I think we can suspend disbelief a bit.
Yeah. So, honestly, that's really the main thing we'd change. And we've been on this for 15 minutes, but Iron Man 3 and Iron Man 2 are monsters.
Although I admit, I actually liked Iron Man 3.
I enjoyed it the first time I saw it, but the Mandarin is really a huge problem.
I feel like it's a failure as an adaptation, but as a movie, I personally don't mind, but I understand why people...
Yeah, it's also not, to me, a fitting conclusion of Tony's arc. The villain, Aldrich Killian, is weak, and the fact that the Ten Rings build up the Mandarin, I think it's unsatisfying as a trilogy's conclusion.
Getting past all the climax stuff with the Mandarin, one last note about Aldrich Killian.
I think that we should adapt the only page he has in the history of comic
Like,
books.
I'm not joking. Okay, we're not making that up. Like, for those of you who haven't read Extremis, Aldrich Killian is actually a character from the original comics, but here's literally all he does in the original comic. In this one, he's actually feeling really guilty about creating Extremis, and
allowing it to be used by a terrorist.
so what he does is basically puts all the blueprints into an email, sends it to the U.S. government, puts a bullet in his head, and calls it macaroni.
Yeah. Like, Aldrich Killian has a single page in actual comics, and it's where he shoots himself in the head out of guilt of Extremis. And I think you could certainly adapt that. Have Aldrich Killian never actually use Extremis on himself, and at the very end, the military and Iron Man are closing in, and he decides to shoot himself rather than be, captured, tried, and sent to jail for all the illegal experiments he's conducted. Because, man, like, here's the thing. As its own story, that's important and everything. However, it is an adaptation. And it's really weird to take the guy and replace him with a guy whose entire screen time consists of him shooting himself in the head. Objectively, that's really dumb.
It is.
It is.
One final note on the ending. Like, the main thing that we want to do with the ending is, even if we still want to keep the thing where he blows up his suits, and if we want to still keep the thing with him getting the shrapnel taken out and so he doesn't have to rely on the arc reactor, make it clear that he is choosing to be Iron Man, that he's not being Iron Man out of necessity anymore. Make it clear, like in the comics, where he kept being Iron Man even after he got the shrapnel taken out.
Yeah. The movie decides to randomly say, you can take the arc reactor out whenever you want. Why don't you? And it's one of those things that in the film, it's really weird and arbitrary because it's not something that's set up or presented. It's something that is randomly told to us that, oh, hey, you can take it out whenever you want now. It's something that I think should be brought up earlier and be more important. That Tony is actively choosing not to take it out. We know that, but it's presented really weirdly in the film, in my opinion.
So yeah, just make it a bit more clear so that way he has more emotional weight of both him letting go but also choosing to keep going forward.
Too. Have him give Rhodey the authority to be Iron Man. Have him give Rhodey the armors. Have him give him access to all of this stuff. And this also references in the comics where Rhodey has spent time as Iron Man when Tony was unable to. Have him basically pat Rhodey on the shoulder and go, you're Iron Man now. Good luck. And maybe at the very end of the movie, we see Tony removes the arc reactor. I don't know. Some kind of last-minute hint that he's not done. That way, it's a lot more about his choice, and it's not Tony's stopped being Iron Man, except in Avengers 2, he's Iron Man, and we don't have time to address it.
Or maybe give him a 10-minute retirement that gets addressed in an after-credits scene in a later movie, so as to justify his absence in Winter Soldier.
Yeah, like part of the problem, man, for a very brief period of time. And we know that Pepper in Civil War is upset with him over it, we think. We know they took a break. I assume it's because he became Iron Man again. Those are the 3 Iron Man movies. Hopefully, through all of our rambling nonsense and non sequiturs into Dragon Ball, all that good stuff, hopefully you found this entertaining, and hopefully this is maybe how you would have wanted things to turn out. And you know what? Keep dreaming. Maybe one day, I don't know, we'll get to make movies. Maybe one day someone who will get to put these ideas and have a cool Mandarin with inhibitor extremis rings, because that'd be pretty rad. If you love Iron Man 2, good on you. I like Iron Man 2 more than I have any good reason to. And if you love Iron Man 3, if you thought the twist worked, awesome. I hope that you love these 3 movies, and I hope these 3 movies were a satisfying conclusion for you. And for other people who disagree, hopefully this version would have been what you might have preferred. And you're kind of like, oh yeah, that's how I would have liked things to go. Because ultimately, we're all just a bunch of nerds sitting here going, man, Shane Black, why didn't you make a better Iron Man movie? Man, Kevin Feige, what happened? Now you're just Happy Hogan. That's pretty weird that the director is now just a supporting character in Spider-Man Homecoming.
Oh well. In any case, I'm Jacob, he's Kaleb, and next time on whatever the heck we're going to call this series,
Let's fix movies.
Let's Fix Movies. Next time on Let's Fix Movies, we're going to take a look at Marvel's Star-Spangled Man with a Plan.
Signing out.
You know, I don't think it's pronounced Fiji.
Is it Feige? Feige?
Phage?
Phage. That's a supervillain name. That's an actual symbiote villain in Spider-Man. Phage. It's spelled differently, but it's Phage. Now I'm not going to criticize him anymore because I'm convinced he has superpowers.
Indeed. All praise the mighty. Okay, we're dragging this out.